Hey there YouTube, I'm Ikitsu, this is the Ikitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome to a little bit of Sins of Solar Empire 2. So today we're going to be talking about the Tech Primacy Titan, which is the Ragnarov. I believe this to be probably the worst of the Titans in the game, but we'll get into why I think that is. It's actually very, very powerful as long as it's allowed to do what it wants to do. However, it's one of the few Titans where you can actually just go up and punch it in the face, and while you will take a lot of damage doing that, it will go down swinging. This is one of the very, very few Titans that you can actually just do that to. So anyway, let's go into the stats here. So it's got 750 durability, 6,575 shield points, 4,870 armor points. I believe that's 4,500 base or 4,750 or somewhere around there. You're getting that extra bonus from just base values. And then you've got 12,800 hull points. 455 antimatter for hidden statistics. You're looking at 105 armor strength and 600 speed. For weapons, you're looking at quite a lot of them. This thing is actually very, very good at forward-firing weapon fire. You can see here, you got these little sort of guns here. Those are your first 4 of the Gauss cannons. It separates those out. I don't know why exactly, because usually they consolidate that all together. But you've got the 4 forward-facing Gauss cannons at 15 damage per second, each with 600 pierce, for a total of 60 damage per second. And then you've got the 12 Gauss cannons that are on these turrets up here. And they deal 15 damage per second each as well. However, these ones have got the same damage values. They just don't all converge together. You can see that there's these ones sort of in the back there that are going to fire backwards. They're not going to be able to fire forwards. They will all be able to fire sideways to each of the sides. So total damage from those 12 Gauss cannons is 180 damage per second at 600 pierce, for a total of 240 damage per second on the Gauss cannons. The really good thing about this thing is you do basically have 12 Gauss cannons that are capable of firing straight forward under most situations there, although some very small targets might be able to avoid that. Still very, very, very good damage because you are liking Gauss weapons more than your other weapons if you can get them. Not because the upgrades are great, but on capital ships they've got excellent items that you can apply to them. You've got one railgun. Used to be that you had to purchase this separately. Now you actually get an item that increases the effectiveness rather than having to buy it outright. It does 75 damage per second at 1,000 pierce. Unfortunately, a railgun is not a Gauss gun, so you don't get the benefits from the Gauss weapon upgrades, but it's still a kinetic weapon. It's still very powerful, and it does have something that basically operates the same way. It just means that you have to get 2 items instead of only needing 1. After that, you got 14 PD autocannons at 4 damage per second each, for a total of 56 damage per second at 0 pierce. And then there's 10 medium autocannons. I'm not going to look at for all the little point defense guns, but you got 10 medium autocannons. You can see them sort of like arranged broadsides for this thing on each of the sides here, 5 per side. You got 8 damage per second on each of those, for a total of 80 damage per second with 200 pierce. The medium autocannons are really just going to help you deal with like corvettes or whatever that are buzzing around you. They're not really a main part of your damage there. You really are hoping to use that forward firepower, and you don't have those as part of that. In addition to that, you do have access to the Ragnarov missile launchers. We can find them over here. You can see that when we add that, they get added onto these little spots here as dots. The missile launchers do have slightly better conversions than they indicate. I have noticed them firing at forward targets, but I'm not 100% sure exactly where their arcs are. Definitely capable of firing at things that are on your flanks, though. Or at least one set is capable of firing on each flank. The missile launchers do 40 damage per second each, for a total of 160 damage with 500 pierce. The missiles are actually, surprisingly, not that important for this thing. You can get away without using those. They don't have the best upgrades for you, and you can save a little bit of space by not taking them. But if you really want that extra damage and you're going for the rapid autoloader, which you really want with this thing, they do benefit from all that to a certain extent. It's just, I don't find that these are that important for the Ragnarov. A lot of the time the target dies to the Gauss weapons before the missiles actually hit. So you have to have something that's got the missile guidance computer, but you don't really want to throw that onto the Ragnarov unless you have nothing better to put it on. So it's a bit tricky to get the Ragnarov missile launchers to work full effect. The only time that they're super useful is when you're going for like capitals or heavier, and that's because they'll survive enough like the Gauss cannon shots that you'll actually be able to get some missile hits there. The other weapon is the Ragnarov railgun accelerator, but like I said, this doesn't add a weapon, it just increases the damage of the existing one. So let's go through the abilities here. This is the most single-minded of all the Titans here. First of all, you got Piercing Shot. I believe this has been changed. I don't actually know the full numbers of this, but I believe it's 25-second cooldown, 18,000 range, and 80 antimatter cost, scaling down to 60. The cooldown is what I'm not sure about. I believe it's 25, 20, and 15. It used to be 20, 15, and 10, but I believe that it's currently 25, 15, and or 25 15. The damage that it does per shot is 1,500, scaling up to 3,000. But if you've got that railgun item, the one that we mentioned earlier, the Ragnarov railgun accelerator, it changes your piercing shot so it does 3,000 at start and scales up to 6,000 at maximum level with 1,000 pierce. This sounds really, really strong, but it's a little bit weaker than you sort of would expect. It's about 200 damage per second if you've got the unimproved one, and it's about 400 damage per second if you've got the improved one at maximum level, which is good. Like, that's an excellent amount of extra damage to have, but it's not as scary as it sounds initially. Still, one of the things to note about that is like twice as much damage as what you get out of like the phase cannon, which is really, really scary. So there's that, and if you've got anything that reduces your cooldown on piercing shot, that becomes increasingly more scary. It just doesn't scale with some of the other things like weapon damage increases because it's an ability, not a weapon. Still, you're gonna really like this if you're going for enemy capital ships or their star bases or what have you. Next is Explosive Shot. This has a 60-second cooldown, scaling down to 30. I believe I'd have to double check that. It's got a 10,000 range. Antimatter cost is 100, scaling down to 50. Radius is 3,000. It's got 750 damage, 1,250 at maximum level. It goes like 750, 1,000, 1,250. It's got really bad scaling. 100 pierce on that shot. And what this is for is like clearing out large amounts of fairly light enemies. One thing to note about it, at max level, because of that 100 pierce, it does actually do a lot more damage than a chastic burst. So it's not terrible. It's not like what I would actually really want out of this thing, but there are reasons to take this that are quite good. So this isn't a terrible ability. There are definitely some strengths to taking it. Generally speaking, I'm going to prefer Piercing Shot. Last ability is Warpath, and this one's a little bit difficult to use in some ways. It gives you up to a maximum of 10 stacks for 10 seconds. They decay really, really quickly. The way I think that Warpath works, and from what I've experienced, is that it actually gains like independent stacks, and they each have their own tracks there. So they decay really quickly, and you are getting them the same sort of way that the Oblivia's plasma stacks go. So if you get lots of kills really, really quickly, you can get yourself up to maximum stacks and it'll work okay. But if you're just sort of getting them at a slow, steady pace, it doesn't really work very well. You want to get them quickly. This increases your weapon damage by 2% per stack, raged up to 6% at maximum level, so a total of 60% at maximum level. And it increases your maximum turn speed by the same amount, so up to a 60% extra turn speed bonus as well. This is actually a respectable damage boost, but it's nothing too crazy. Like, this is not as easy to stack up as you would like it to be. This isn't really as easy to use as you would like it to be, and the reward for getting it is not quite as high as you'd like it to be. But it's still quite strong. 60% is still 60%. It's still okay. I would say that it pairs well with Piercing Shot in a lot of situations, but it depends on what you're sort of up to with this thing. The last ability here is the Novolith Cannon. This is your ultimate. This acts as a Novolith Cannon, and in a practical sense, what this does is two different things. One, it helps speed up your bombardment of planets by a lot. Being able to do that 5,000 damage as a burst spike when you're bombing a planet helps you bring it down a lot more quickly. And it potentially lets you blitz a planet that is defended, even if it's got like a bunch of defenses, enemy fleets and stuff like that. Destroying a planet and taking it over while your opponent is still defending it can actually give you some interesting bonuses during that fight, because you get rid of the planetary items that they're using that may be swinging the fight in their favor. It makes it so that they can't build any new buildings. It makes it you can build buildings. It means you can start working on a planetary item that will make it so that you can fight better in that gravity well. Lets you start building a starbase if you really want to. That'll keep your opponent distracted for a little bit. And the other thing that's nice about this is it acts as a miniature version of Quell. The fact that you've got an ultimate that is slightly worse than a level 2 ability that you just get on an Advent Capital really tells you how busted Quell is, because it is like probably the most overpowered ability in the game, but I really don't want them to change it because Advent absolutely does need that for busting through certain things. But yeah, you can absolutely use the Novolith Cannon as a miniature version of Quell as well if you're not trying to bombard a planet more quickly. It lets you sort of just blow up a planet, deal a whole bunch of damage to it, but more importantly, disable their defenses for 60 seconds in that gravity well, giving you 60 seconds of unfettered access to just blowing up their fleet while their defenses are shut down. And then once their fleet is gone, you can turn your attention to those defenses and hopefully roll over them really quickly, which shouldn't be too hard. The Ragnarov is very, very good at destroying star bases and stuff like that. So something you could potentially do. I do think that the Novolith cannon is a little bit underwhelming in all honesty, but the fact that it's like you're paying for an ultimate on a Titan to get Quell is really a testament to how powerful that is, because I still think it's good in spite of that. It's got a 4-minute cooldown. In spite of that, I still think it's good. So it definitely could be better, but it also could definitely be worse here. So anyhow, that's all the abilities on the Ragnarov. I want to talk a little bit about why I don't like this at this point in time. So the Ragnarov is extremely deadly. It's very, very good at killing stuff. It's good at killing things in every weight class. It's probably the single deadliest ship in the game in terms of its ability to kill stuff. But to a certain extent, that doesn't really help it for what you want it to do. All of the other Titans can be extremely hard to kill. The Ragnarov, even if you go full defensive with it, even if you have a defensive fleet, is very killable. It's not that it's a glass cannon. It is still pretty beefy. It's still got pretty decent armor and stuff like that. It has no regenerative abilities or items that really keep it alive through a really tough fight. So if I, as an Advent player, for example, wanted to kill a Ragnarov, I could absolutely do it. There's nothing they could really do to stop me from being able to snipe it. So if we gotten into like hyper late game, I've got like a full Advent fleet. Someone else has got a full tech fleet. They've got a level 10 Ragnarov. I've got a level 10, say, Eradicate, which is garbage, but I've got that for argument's sake. I've got my 3 Justitias. And I've got sort of my fleet assembled knowing that they've got that Ragnarov there. I could build a fleet that could snipe out the Ragnarov. Like, no ability whatsoever on his end to actually stop me from doing that. And if I destroy a level 10 Ragnarov, as hard and bloody as that's going to be, that's going to be really, really hard for my opponent to come back from, because they have to get a new Ragnarov. It's going to be level 2. They're going to have to spend an absolute ton of resources on that. And if they've lost that lead from having that, or not even lead, if they've lost that parity, then like it doesn't matter that they killed a whole crap ton of my Destra Crusaders that I would use to snipe out the Ragnarov. It doesn't matter that they killed some of my capitals, really. I can get all of the Destras back just through hand-waving and resurrection. I can pay to get those capitals back. It's not really a big deal. Capitals are fairly expendable hyper late game. That Ragnarov is just a huge loss, and they can't really do as much to stop that from happening. And Ankleon, you can throw in a ton of things to make it so that it's just going to survive. And if I throw my entire weight into destroying the Ankleon, my fleet's going to get completely wiped by my opponent's fleet by the time I've destroyed it. It's just so durable that that's going to happen. The Varastra, to a lesser extent, has the mobility to get out of a bad situation if it looks like I'm focusing it, so they can actually just sort of leave if they really need to. The Eradicate, obviously, is never going to get killed by anything. If I've got a level 10 Eradicate, it's literally just not going to die. So if you're focusing it down, good luck with that. That's a really terrible idea. And what's going to happen is you'll lose like your entire fleet in that situation. If you've got the Corastal, it's also one of the ones that's super durable, that's capable of surviving through a lot of nonsense. It is probably the closest, along with the Coronata, to being killable while being able to defend itself a little bit better than the Ragnarov. But it can end up in a situation where like it's regenerating so much health that it's not really dying all that quickly. But the Ragnarov has nothing like this. If the Ragnarov is getting focused down, your only hope is to be able to sort of peel it around, turn it around, and start running with it. And it can get away if you run away with it fast enough, but a Ragnarov that just sort of immediately turns tail and runs every single fight there is leaving you high and dry as far as fleet damage goes. Because suddenly you've lost this huge damage dealer from your fleet that should be facing its guns towards the enemy. But at the same time, it's too valuable for you to really like sacrifice it by just having it deal as much damage as it goes down. So I really don't like that one-dimensionality of the Ragnarov, and I don't like the fact that in that sort of situation where you've got Titans, it feels like it's one of the ones that's more vulnerable than all of the other ones out there. Even if it is capable of winning 1v1 in a hypothetical grudge match between Titans. I don't think that's the most useful statistic on a Titan. It also provides, again, no utility to your fleet whatsoever other than Quell on the Novalift cannon, which is not really enough to save it there. Do I want this to change? Not necessarily. I think that one of the things that you can do with tech primacy is you've got like that quadruple threat where you've got like the Ragnarov Titan and you've got your three Kavarakovs. And all three of those Kavarakovs can be made into a tremendous threat that deals a huge amount of damage. They're just behind the Oblivia in terms of that. And then you've also got the Ragnarov, where you can choose to destroy each of the three Kavarakovs because you can kill them off faster than you can kill a Ragnarov. They're a little bit flimsier than a Ragnarov. So you can kill them faster and reduce the DPS quicker, but the amount of damage that the Ragnarov does is radically higher than each of the Kavarakovs. So if you kill it first, even though it takes longer, you'll be reducing the damage by a larger amount. And you can sort of force your opponent to a situation where they have to make that hard choice. And you have to sort of go in for a decisive push along with that. If you're behind and your opponent has got like their Titan and their three, like let's say your opponent has like the Coronata three Oblivias, and you've got like your Ragnarov and your three Kavarakovs. It's kind of like all in at that point for both of you. If one side gains the advantage over the other and like does a better job managing their stuff, gets the win early with one of those sort of things, then you can probably push that to a victory. That's probably what you're going to have to do with it. Because if you like, you can't limp out of there with the Ragnarov. You can limp out of there with the Kavarakov. So that's the thing to note about that. So the Ragnarov is probably the better option to fire at there. But yeah, whoever comes out of that fight like on top there, the other opponent really has no way of coming back into that and has no real way of saving their ships, which you know kind of makes for a weird fight there. I think that this needs to be a decisive blow kind of ship. I don't think it has that sort of utility to it that keeps it in the game for other sort of situations. Anyway, as far as the military research goes, this is a weird ship. I don't actually think advanced crew training is as vital for it as it is for some of your other Titans. It is nice to have two abilities, but I do think that you can sort of get away with just either having piercing shot or just having explosive shot. You don't really need both at the early levels. And because of that, you kind of can get away with having a level 1. Now, obviously, level 2 is definitely better, but I don't think there's any hugely synergistic like pulls that you could get other than maybe Warpath Explosive Shot. But even that one's not great because of the way the timing of those abilities works. So it's still better like to get advanced crew training so you start off level 2, be close to level 3. That does help, but it's not as important for this guy as it is for some of the other ones out there. The Ragnarov does really like the techs here. One of the biggest hindrances to this thing is also the fact that the railgun accelerator is in tier 5. If you don't have the ability to get to tier 5, this thing falls off real hard compared to what it could be. Because you're only doing that 200 damage per second off of the piercing shot, which means you're paying a ton of antimatter per second to just have a phase cannon, which is an extremely powerful weapon. It's really, really good. Like 200 damage per second, that's great. 200 damage per second, though, like draining all of your antimatter and being like something you have to level up 3 times, not anywhere near as good as just clicking and saying, okay, I've got the phase cannon now. Right, so it's a really painful sort of thing to not be able to get that big bonus there. And of course, it's also really nice to have that double damage on your railgun, which is actually more than double damage. It actually increases it to like 200 damage per second on the basic railgun as well, because it also increases your attack speed by 25%. So it gives you like that stacking bonus there, making it really, really, really powerful. So absolutely want to get to tier 5. If you can't, that does change things a little bit. I would never get the hanger there. You do want the 2 toughness increases. Those are both very good for this thing. If you can get to tier 5 again, you can get access to that extra armor plating, but you're missing that 3rd tier that the Ancleon has, so you're a little bit more fragile than it. As far as armaments go, you don't really care about the propellants or the kinetics here. The autocannons are good for you. They're just not really that vital in terms of what your damage output actually is. The most important part of this tree is that it gives you access to the rapid auto loaders, which is going to work on basically all your stuff there. The Gauss weapon upgrades, they suck, but you do still want them because it unlocks the heavy Gauss slugs upgrade, which is the most powerful ship item in the game if you've got all Gauss weapons. The advanced Gauss coils are also quite okay, as are the advanced quick Gauss capacitors, giving that extra weapon reload. The total sort of effect of this is a lot of extra damage, but it is a shame that you're missing the sort of like 30% base values that you could get with like every other weapon in the game. Next up would be like missiles. I don't think that the ship actually cares that much about its missiles. Adding them in does help, but it really is not that important for you. The warheads are actually kind of interesting for this one. You can end up in a situation where your strategy is one where you want to take these, where you're just novolithing the planet, you're just blowing up the planet really, really quickly without even defeating the enemy there. In which case, something like Savage Thrill and Submission Warheads and the High Yield Warheads are actually more important for the strategy than it is for most of your other Titans or other capital ships. Because that helps out with that. Pillage War Chest is also pretty good for that purpose there if you're going to go for that kind of build, but it's not really something that I do, so I don't really think about it too hard. I'm not too sure how practical it is. I just know that if you are going for that sort of route, this would be quite good for it. As far as engineering goes, you really do want those armor bonuses. Being able to get access to the reactive plating blueprint does help this quite a bit. I do think the ablative is going to more often be the one that this thing wants. Hard to say for sure. It's just that if you're taking this thing, there's not actually that many missiles that are capable of properly piercing 750 toughness durability there. So there are some beams that can. So if you're up against like some of the heavier advent stuff, they can get kind of damaging with the laser beams there. The Vasari can easily get access to that 1,000 pierce beam. Honestly, though, like you could probably just go for the reactive plating for that extra armor strength that you could get out of that. You do want the advanced maneuvering. It's one of your rare chances to try and get enough maneuvering to get out of a fight if it's bad. It does help a little bit as far as that goes. The extra hull points are quite nice for that. You do definitely want the potent reaction chaining for this thing. You are going to be blitzing through a ton of antimatter regardless of which of the two active abilities you're going for. Both of them have very low cooldowns, and even though they're relatively low cost, you're going to be spam casting either of those so quickly that it'll drain you pretty quickly. The antimatter engine blueprint is also pretty important as a result of that. This is, again, more because I prefer the piercing shot. If you're going for the other one, it's a little bit less important to take the antimatter engine blueprint, but you'll still want the potent reaction chaining. One of the other things to note is your ultimate doesn't actually require any antimatter, so just fire it off. It doesn't really matter if you are running low on antimatter. This ship does use, of course, the shields, so they're going to be good for it, but they're not really a huge part of its defenses there. For civil research, you've got access to those movement speed bonuses through your culture. That's just about all you've got from that there. Not really the best sort of situation as far as culture goes, but that's kind of tech for you. So, yeah, the Ragnarov has got some pretty good stuff that it can get from its tech tree there. Let's take a look at different builds here. So, like I was saying, Piercing Shot is what I prefer, and I also prefer Piercing Shot even if I'm in a situation where I do not think I'm going to be able to get Tech 5. It's just much more sensible to me to use the Ragnarov to fire at hard targets rather than using it to clear out the lighter ships. Part of the reason is that they've done this sort of thing where like a lot of the most hard-hitting ships in the game are cruisers or heavier. And what they really need to do is make it so that there are some frigates that are super high pierce and high damage. Like the Caleb is closest to that concept. The Canrack Assailant is also pretty close to that, but neither of them actually have very high damage values. Like, I'm talking about a frigate that actually has very high cost per unit, so you can't spam out like a huge wave of them. But they've got this sort of like frigate attributes where you don't want to be using something like the Ragnarov and its gigantic guns there, or even like a Corvette that's got that kind of set of attributes where you can't counter it with something like a Ragnarov very easily. Because they're too small, fast, and light, but they can still actually deal enough damage to threaten something like a Ragnarov. In which case, something like the explosive shot might come into play as being the more valuable option. But it's so much more valuable to be able to use piercing shot in so many situations there. Because if you're clearing out a whole ton of cruisers, this thing's guns will clear out like one cruiser per volley pretty much consistently once you got upgrades. Piercing shot makes it so that you can take out capital ships fairly quickly, or even like Titans over a period of time. But explosive shot really just kills off like frigates, which like you're not threatened by. There's not enough frigates that really threaten something like a Ragnarov. Even if you're getting shot at by like a whole ton of Kalos or whatever, it takes so many Kalos to actually damage Ragnarov because their damage values are so low. And they don't even have 750 Pierce. So, yeah, I do prefer Piercing Shot even if I don't have access to the Railgun. But this is going to be up prioritized if I do have access to that. We're going to combine that with Warpath typically, although you could take a little bit of Explosive Shot if you really wanted to. Especially the first level of Explosive Shot is actually quite strong for just an occasional poke in there and deal some damage. But with this particular build, if we get access to it, we're obviously taking the Railgun Accelerator. We can take the Ragnarov missile launchers. We're going to be standing back and shooting stuff, so being able to do that is quite strong. Definitely want access to the Rapid Auto Loader and the Heavy Gauss Slugs. Basically, the Heavy Gauss Slug and the Rapid Auto Loader are a must-have for this, no matter what build we're going for, because they just increase our damage by such a tremendous amount no matter what we're doing that they become sort of core to it. In this particular case, we're doing such huge damage and we're such high priority that we are going to want to throw a lot into defenses. So if we've got sort of these four, then what we're going to want is the core systems armor, the extra armor plating 2, and then potentially the reactive plating. However, if I'm in this sort of situation actually where I'm able to get tier 5, I'm dropping the Ragnarov missiles and I'm getting the antimatter engine instead. If I'm stuck at tier 4, if I can't get up to there, that's when we get the Ragnarov missile launchers. That's where it becomes a little bit better to have access to that. We're losing access to the extra armor plating. In that particular case, I'm going to get the combat repair system. The self-repair in combat at such a high amount there, with such a high hull point pool, does actually let this thing survive a decent amount longer. So it's kind of okay. But if it's pulling on that, it's in pretty dire straits at that point in time. You could theoretically replace that with armor patch kit spam, but I find that's not really that easy to get the most value out of. You do get punched through pretty quickly in spite of that, typically speaking there. So in this particular build, you're just going to be using the piercing shot to take out capital ships while using Warpath by attacking with your guns against like enemy cruisers. I find that works out really, really well because you're getting sort of the best of both worlds. You're killing all their cruisers really, really quickly. You're killing off their capital ships fairly quickly with piercing shot. If you don't have access to the upgraded version of piercing shot, however, you do have to focus on the capitals, in which case you're only getting Warpath from your secondary guns firing at like secondary targets that are kind of around you, especially with the Ragnarov missile launchers typically going after the sort of side targets a lot of the time, I find. So yeah, this one is way stronger if you've got access to tier 5. It's way weaker if you don't. The next one is going for an explosive shot build. If we go for explosive shot, we're definitely going Warpath because what we're trying to do here is use our explosive shot to gain a huge amount of Warpath stacking. It's hard to do because Warpath is inconsistent. It's a slow cooldown, so it takes a while, and this falls off quickly. But what we're going to be doing in this particular case, we are not taking the Ragnarov Railgun Accelerator. We're taking the missile launcher, the rapid autoloader, the heavy Gauss slugs, the full defensive kit, and then the antimatter engine as well. In this particular case, we could replace our second level of extra armor plating for something like the armor patch kits or the radiation bomb. The radiation bomb stacking with the explosive shot can help out quite a bit with what we're doing with this thing. Although you can just put the radiation bombs on something else if you want to. But the reason that this works is that the explosive shot lets you dispatch those lighter ships, especially if you're matching it with a radiation bomb, and especially if you've got access to... I can't remember where these go, actually. You get access to like the improved modular equipment relay, giving you better uses out of those radiation bombs, so you can use more of them. That helps quite a bit. So if you're doing that, you can get a decent amount of extra damage that way to destroy all those light frigates and stuff like that. And then you use your main guns primarily to destroy your opponent's capital ships and stuff like that, because you'll have that 60% scaling from Warpath pretty consistently there. So it's a little bit inconsistent. It's a little bit swingy in terms of how its damage goes, but you're killing both kinds of targets relatively quickly with that build. I think it works pretty okay. Itemizing it for me is a little bit difficult. I've never been quite comfortable with any specific set of things there, but it can work okay. The last one would be going for Warpath as our main. This is exactly the same because I'm going to be going for explosive shot as the secondary ability there. And as a result, it's basically the exact same thing. The only thing is I take the warpath and level it up faster than I level up explosive shot. I don't think this is as good a build as going for the explosive shot one, but if we find that we're doing an okay enough job at eradicating enemy frigates quickly enough to get warpath stacked up anyway, then it's actually kind of fine to just take more warpath, because getting to 60% instead of 40% does help a little bit in that case there. Generally speaking, though, if I can get to the maximum tier of technology, I'm going for the piercing shot ability build no matter what's going on the battlefield, just because I know that that's going to be the one that has late game scaling. Once I've destroyed like all of my opponent's frigates and stuff like that, they're probably not going to replace them. There's no such thing as like a late game frigate composition, really. There kind of is, but it's so hard to get that to work compared to like switching over to cruisers and capital ships that oftentimes it's not really a great idea. So yeah, those are kinds of the builds for the Ragnarov. I think that this thing it does what it does quite well, but it's got a bunch of flaws to it. One, it doesn't have any fleet support capabilities whatsoever, so it really is just coming down to its ability to deal damage, which is very, very good. The fact that it's harder to preserve than pretty much any of the other Titans that are out there, with no tricks that you can use to like save it, does really hurt as well. And like its complete lack of like real durability in its kit does make it really hard to keep alive in situations where other Titans could definitely get out of that situation there. So I think that it's really sort of probably the weakest out of all the Titans because of all that consideration there. However, if you are in a situation where you're a little bit ahead, if you've got that situation where you've got a Titan and your opponent doesn't, or you're in a situation where you're up against an opponent that can't get a really strong Titan out, or they have to scale it up and they can't do that very quickly, the Ragnarok provides a humongous amount of early Titan threat. Compared to the other ones. I think the Ankleon needs a little bit of scaling to get really where it wants to be. Certainly the Coronata does. The only ones that I think are really scary out of the gate are things like the Ragnarov, so it does have a little bit of a benefit as far as that kind of thing goes, where early on, as soon as you get it, if your opponent's not capable of countering it, then it's probably the strongest out of the gate for a very, very brief window before your opponent realizes what's happening. And like the problem for me is if you are going for that sort of strategy, you're banking an awful lot on what your opponent is doing there. Because if they're focusing entirely on like a strategy of destroying like your Corvettes or whatever, and then you pull out with a Ragnarov, like yeah, you'll absolutely destroy them. But like they were building enough Corvettes that you were doing nothing for that entire time you were building that Ragnarov. Hopefully your opponent has had the brain cells to like put together enough force to like really pressure you and like destroy a bunch of your stuff during that time. And if you're behind enough, like, and your Ragnarok comes out, then yeah, it doesn't matter that the Ragnarok could crush, because you could take like 4 plants at that point in time and still potentially like, if you're behind enough, they could actually just overwhelm it by switching over to the proper counter. It's hard to say. Like I do think that this thing is really, really, really powerful when it gets going and is doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's just that even in that sort of scenario where it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, your opponent could come up with a way to actually just kill it if they play it patiently, they play it defensively, they just sort of move back and get their forces reassigned so that they can get the right kinds of ships to go fight a Ragnarov, and then they go snipe it. It doesn't really matter that's gain levels. It doesn't matter that you put equipment on it. They'll be able to snipe it out there, which I think does hurt it compared to the others. In any event, though, that's my thoughts on the Ragnarov. I think that this is one where people are probably going to disagree with me, because there's going to be lots of games where they've pulled out a Ragnarov and that immediately swung like a bunch of fights hugely in their favor. And I guess that does make it sort of like, so it is more powerful than it seems. It's just, they're probably forgetting all those times where they were trying to get a Ragnarov, they got absolutely bodied before they could actually finish building it. And then like they don't blame the Ragnarov for the fact that they like lost. So it's hard for me to really say. I don't 100% know for sure on this one. In any event, though, that's going to be our video for today. I hope you found this one enjoyable. Hope to see you guys all next time.